Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mastering the Business of Yoga. I am super excited that you're joining me for today's episode of the podcast. And today's episode of the podcast is a fun one. This is one of my favorite podcast episodes to record of the year. It is our 2022 year in review. And this is a tradition I've been doing since early days of the podcast, where the last episode of the year, I sit down and I reflect on the previous year. I talk about my business, some personal stuff, how things are going, what's happening for the following year, et cetera, et cetera. And even if you don't have a podcast, I feel like this is just a really fun tradition to do. You can sit down and do some journaling on it, or, sit down and just meditate, have a think about it. It's such a fun way to close out the year, is to just think about and reflect on how the year has been. And I really love to do it publicly on the show so that I can just share, what the year has been like, what I've learned in my business, and all of that good stuff. So I'm really excited to dive in with you guys today. And before we get to it, I just wanted to give a little shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Offering Tree. Super excited to continue working with them. I'm really, really grateful for the partnership I have with Offering Tree. And I know from meeting with them just a couple of weeks ago, there's lots of exciting stuff coming for 2023. So you guys definitely stay tuned with everything that they have going on. And if you're not familiar with Offering Tree, I definitely recommend going to check them out to see if they might be a good fit for your business. They have website services, they have booking services, they have email, newsletter, options. They've got, pretty much everything you need in your business, from a platform to host courses, memberships, video on demand, and so much more. Plus, you can go get a really, really good discount if you head on over to offeringtree.com/MBOM. So go check them out, and I will tell you a little bit more about them and some of the cool stuff they've got going on a little later on in the episode. So I wanted to kick this episode off by just giving you some stats for the podcast for 2022. So I went back and looked at it, and we did 49 episodes of the podcast, which is pretty amazing considering there's 52 weeks in the year. So just short of, a weekly episode. And I'm pretty amazed and impressed by that, especially considering, one of the big things that happened to me in 2022 is that I had a baby, and I was actually fully offline for the first 4 months of the year. So if you emailed me or anything like that, you probably received an automated message followed by a message from my assistant. And, I was really offline for a good portion of the year, which I'll dive into in a little bit more detail in just a minute. But I just feel kind of amazed that I was able to put 49 episodes of the podcast out, and we had over 100,000 downloads of the podcast this year. So just wanted to say a big thank you to you for listening to the show, for sharing with your friends and family, other yoga teachers. It really, really makes a huge difference to have you guys listening. So just really want to express my gratitude for everyone who's been a part of this show and it continuing. So yeah, I'm pretty just happy and impressed with those stats. And one of the big things, like I said, was that I had a baby in February. So I actually went mostly offline at the beginning of January. So what has 2022 looked like for me? Well, let's back up to the beginning of the year. So basically, before I went on maternity leave at the beginning of January, I spent the end part of 2021 doing a ton of work to basically backlog episodes. So I was recording podcasts like nobody's business, through November and even December of 2021. And if you remember back, this is, going way back, and I'm sure you guys have so much on the go that maybe you don't remember, but in 2020, I did a pretty significant holiday break. I think I took like 2 full weeks off my business. I stopped the podcast a little bit early. I gave myself a nice like 4-week break off the show. I'm pretty sure it was. I did an episode in early 2021 talking about, taking vacation, stuff like that. And I wanted to repeat that for 2021, but because my maternity leave was starting early in 2022, it just didn't really feel like it made sense to do that. So the end of 2021 was really busy for me. I was teaching in a couple of yoga teacher training programs, so I wrapped all of that up. I had, coaching work that I was wrapping up, client work that I was wrapping up. And so basically at the beginning of January, I wrapped up a good amount of my work. And what is really beautiful about working for yourself is that I was able to kind of declare, hey, I'm on maternity leave, but during the days or the times when I was feeling really good and I had high energy and whatnot, I was able to do some work. So I was on maternity leave, but I was also working pretty part-time for the first bit of January while I was waiting for the baby to come. So it was pretty cool to be able to really lean on my very small team that I work with at that point. So I have somebody who is editing and producing the podcast, and then an amazing assistant who basically took over like all the work that I was doing. So we had a lot of planning that went into that so that I was able to just basically go fully offline. And it was really nice because I went, like I said, kind of on maternity leave at the beginning of January, but I wasn't completely offline because babe hadn't arrived yet. And so we were able to have a really nice transition period in which she took over a lot of the work, but I was there to answer questions, to iron out any, kinks that were happening, make sure everything was really flowing smoothly with production of the podcast, et cetera, before I actually fully went offline. And so, what my plan had been was to take, 4 full months off. So January, February, March, April, and I guess May. So that's 5 months. May I had, was the last month I had podcasts backlogged. So I did 5 months worth of backlogging on podcasts, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot to you. It sounds like a lot to me, but it's basically like 20 episodes, maybe a little bit less than that because, we didn't kick things off until mid-January, but, between 15 and 20 podcast episodes. So you can imagine how much I was hustling through the second half of 2021, and especially those final months to get everything ready so that I could be fully offline. This is like negotiating partnerships with advertisers, to recording introductions to the podcast, writing out the descriptions, making sure that the whole production schedule was outlined, making sure that all the photos were organized and everything was organized so that the people who work with me were able to just execute. And then at the end of January, or close to the end of January, I went fully offline because my due date was the beginning of February. And, mama was getting pretty tired, pretty big, pretty pregnant at that point. And this is the first time that I've ever really trusted, my first kind of baby, which is my podcast, in the hands of somebody else. And I am just so pleased and grateful with how everything went. Everything was very smooth. I was offline fully from February through until the beginning of May. So February, March, and April, 3 full months completely offline, didn't really touch anything, didn't go really on my business social media outside of maybe a couple small things. I was checking emails very infrequently and everything just ran smoothly. So I'm not sure if you guys knew that or not, because we had planned everything so that it would just be executed as if I was doing it all. And you guys, I did almost nothing during that period and it was really, really beautiful. And then come May, I was very aware of the fact that I only had a few more episodes backlogged. And so it was time to start recording again. So what did that look like for me? Basically, it looked like, for the first couple of episodes, scheduling things around my husband's work schedule. He has a full-time job. He works full-time. So, scheduling podcast interviews in times where he could take the baby. And ultimately we decided, okay, if I'm going to be doing this work, we need a little bit of extra support. And so we ended up hiring a nanny part-time. So I have a wonderful nanny here in Mexico where I live. She's Mexican. She speaks Spanish to our baby girl, which is so amazing. And so we brought her on for 2 days a week so that I would have a dedicated 10 hours of work time, and I was able to start scheduling calls at a more regular time. And so May was kind of, dipping my feet a little bit into work again, but it was very, very minimal. It was kind of a max of like 5 hours a week. I started doing a bit of client work, just very, very, very infrequently at that point. I had a couple of podcast interviews scheduled so that I could, move forward with June. And then I basically just started adding work over the months. So May was not very much work. I just kind of was dabbling. June, I added a little bit more. July, I was mostly in Canada, so I didn't work a ton. I was able to take a trip home to introduce my baby to family and friends, which was really great. And because I was traveling and didn't have a lot of childcare, I didn't do a lot then. But August came back, added a bit more work to my plate. September was kind of working more of a part-time schedule. And September was a really interesting month for me because my plate was feeling quite full at that point, and I sort of realized where my max is for the amount of childcare that I have right now, and just the amount that my child's napping, and my capacity to show up as a good mother, but also to show up as a good business owner and a good coach and all those types of things. So I feel like it's been a very interesting journey this year to just kind of test the waters in terms of what feels good, what doesn't. Hit that max in September and decided to step back just a little bit because it felt like just a little bit too much for me at this point with the amount of support I have and the amount of childcare we do want with the baby, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a very interesting year in terms of learning to balance my new responsibilities of taking care of my sweet baby girl and also continuing to run my business and navigating what that feels like. And I found that, yes, I do enjoy working a little bit part-time. I love that I get to use my brain in a different way. I love the intellectual stimulation. I love the creativity that comes from my podcast, working on my business, getting to have podcast interviews. But I also really love to be able to be present with her and to be in her life and watch her during these early moments of her life and these like kind of big life stages. So I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about what's to come for 2023, but it's definitely been an interesting year. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty excited to just be wrapping up for the year and to be taking a little bit of a holiday break, which again, I'll tell you about in a little bit. So maternity leave was really amazing. Work with a baby has had its ups and downs. It's certainly been interesting. It's been a lot more challenging than I think I would have imagined, but has also had, it's really rewarding and fulfilling moments. And I really, really miss the podcast. That's one of the things I found when I was offline. Of all the things that I do, I think the podcast was definitely one where I was like, oh, I miss talking to people and just having these really cool, inspiring conversations. So it was fun to get back to that. Highlights of 2022. So a highlight of my year was certainly stepping into motherhood, having my baby. She's an absolute light in my life. She's such a joy. And that was certainly the biggest highlight for me, was just, giving birth and becoming a mom and getting to see her grow. And at the time of recording, and the time of release for this episode, she's about 10 months old. And so it's pretty crazy for me to think about when I sat down to record this episode last year. I was super pregnant. I had this baby growing inside my belly. I knew she was there. But I didn't know who she was, right? And it's so crazy. They come out and it's just this little person who's their own little soul, and you just have no idea how they're going to change your life. So she's certainly been a highlight. We've had some really cool travels through 2022. Obviously, we didn't do a lot of stuff when she was first born, and we just did some road trips kind of in central Mexico, close to where we live, for the first couple of months, particularly while we waited for her passport to come in. But after we got her passport, we made a really amazing trip back to Canada. Like I mentioned, we spent about 3 weeks in Canada in July, and we just had this tour happening of introducing the baby to family and friends. And I have 3 living grandparents that she got got to meet. And that was certainly, a highlight of this year, was being able to take that trip. And so that was definitely really great. I think a highlight of 22 was also just keeping my business going. I think that it was a big step for me to trust my business in the hands of other people and to just see people and witness people show up for me and be able to hold the fort down in a really high quality way while I was offline was really amazing. And I think it just opened my eyes to what can happen when you let people in and you give people responsibility and you trust them with the things that you care about. So that was certainly a highlight for me, was being able to take that time off while Lou was really, really young, and just have people that I work with that I just, I really trust them wholeheartedly. So that was a highlight for sure. Another more recent highlight for me has been getting back into teaching the business of yoga. So just in the last month and a half, I stepped back into a role teaching with the Vancouver School of Healing Arts, where I previously, before maternity leave, before baby, was teaching all of their business of yoga programs. And this is something I really, really love doing. And I was basically off for about a year. I wrapped up, the last program at the end of 2021, and then wasn't teaching for all of 2022 up until, November of this year. And stepping back into that, I was a little uncertain about how it would go, just because, even with working, I've been working so part-time, and I've been really working on managing my energy, just because motherhood is very exhausting for me. And I wasn't sure, how it would feel to go back to that. And it's been really amazing to step into that role once again. So that's certainly been a highlight of just the last couple of months. Of course, it wouldn't be a 2022 full year in review episode if I didn't talk about the challenges of 2022, but I'm going to leave that until after we take a little break to hear a bit more about Offering Tree. Hey friends, we're just taking a quick little break from the episode to talk about Offering Tree. Offering Tree is an all-in-one software for your business, one website and one place for everything. You can host your membership, on-demand library, class schedule, emails, blog posts, and take easy payments all in one spot. As a public benefit company, Offering Tree is helping you first, and they've tried their best to keep their costs as low as possible. They bundled a ton of value into their Essentials plan with no hidden costs or fees. On top of that, Offering Tree is super, super easy to use, which is one of the main reasons that I love working with them and love recommending them for you, yoga teachers. The step-by-step process for setting up your site makes it easy to design something unique in just 30 minutes. Offering Tree's unlimited page builder gives you endless possibilities for business growth. Updating your site is simple and straightforward. Got a workshop or course that you only run once a year? Design a page for it and simply unpublish the page until you need it again. And when you reach out to support, you'll be able to talk to a real person. Their world-class support team is here to help. And on top of that, they're offering you a discount for listening to MBM. So if you are interested in checking out Offering Tree, doing a free trial, or learning more, head on over to offeringtree.com/MBM. All right, now back to the episode. All right, so challenges of 2022. Going back to work in the beginning was challenging. Just managing my energy was hard. And I went through some big emotions and big transitions in terms of the idea of going back to work. And part of this is that I'm from Canada. In Canada, it's very standard that people get a 12-month maternity leave. I don't have a full-time job that pays maternity leave. And so the time that I did take off was paid for by myself. I didn't receive anything from anyone. And so, this was something I was planning for, something that my husband and I planned for. We were able to save money and just, figure it out on our own so that it would work. But part of that for me was, okay, I'm planning, 4 months completely offline. And then the plan is to go back part-time. How do we make this work? Is it okay for me to do this? How is it going to feel? And am I going to be too tired? Is it going to feel right to bring somebody into our home to take care of our baby? This is just stuff that if you haven't had a baby before, you just don't know what it's going to feel like. And so I planned for certain things, but I really didn't know what it was going to be like. And right around when I did come back to work in May of 2022, just really part-time, I very much grappled with, if I wanted to do things, what I wanted to do, how much time I wanted to be away from Lou, all of that type of stuff. And there was also a lot of guilt that came with it. There was guilt in the moments that I wanted to work. There was guilt in some moments when I was working, when I wanted to be with her. I had a really hard time when we first brought somebody into our house, like to pass my really small infant off to somebody else. I worried about, does she feel safe? Is it okay? How is this affecting her development? And so that was just a big challenge. And, now that I've been through this a little bit, I can look back on it and see that, it's a really big blessing to be able to have a nanny in our house. We don't have to leave the house with the baby. She gets to nap in her own space. I'm there, so I was able to continue nursing her. We didn't have to, wean her, put her on formula, pump, bottle feed, all that type of stuff. So we have a really, really ideal setup. And I was really able, because of my work situation, to set my own hours, set things up in a really flexible way. And I really realized, what a privilege that is. Some people don't have that opportunity. And yeah, I felt just really grateful for being able to do that, and for everything that I was able to do and that I was able to juggle, I guess you could say. But still, with that, there came, just a lot of challenges, a lot of mom guilt, a lot of conversations with other mom friends in terms of like, how do you handle this? And I think I've come to a place now where I've been able to strike a balance and understand that I can love my baby and want to spend time with her. And it's also okay for me to want to spend some time on my business or doing other things for me. And that doesn't mean I love her any less, but it's certainly a challenge, especially in those early days and when you first step into motherhood. So that was a big challenge. Another challenge was just getting back into the rhythm and the flow of working. And then also, working on days where maybe the baby didn't sleep as well, or, oh, I have a call, but she's due to eat. And, I need to feed her, but I'm supposed to be on a podcast interview right now. With all of the things that I was able to juggle, there was also challenges that came with it. So I think a lot of my challenges for 2022 really stemmed around just this new life mode that I'm in. And I also struggled a little bit with the idea of my time is not my own anymore. And so it's like, hey, I've got this burst of inspiration to talk about this thing for the podcast or post on social media or make a reel, but I'm busy taking care of the baby and I can't do it right in that moment. And previously to this, I was very much in control of my own time. It's something that I really worked hard to do. And, it just was challenging to adjust to that. And I think if you're a parent out there, you probably understand that. One other challenge I will say that I had was just getting back into client work, just because that is a little bit more dependent on other people, let's say. People are sending me projects or asks or things that they need done. And, in my previous non-mom life, I was very responsive. I was at my computer all day. I was working full time. I had a lot of flexibility. I was able to, work on projects for long hours, et cetera, et cetera. And that just isn't my capacity anymore. I don't have the same energy. I don't have the same time, same capacity. And there's been moments where I feel like with client work, I can't show up in the same way that I showed up previously. And as somebody who's a bit of a recovering perfectionist and also a people pleaser, this was something that was quite challenging for me. So 2022 overall was a really, really amazing year. And I think that most of my challenges came from just a lot of really big personal growth, a lot of balancing, and a lot of just figuring out this new chapter that I'm in. So for anyone out there that is maybe stepping into a new chapter in 2023, or maybe also went through a big new chapter in 2022, whether or not that was a baby or maybe a new work opportunity or some sort of shift in your life, I totally feel you and hear you, because it's a lot to kind of go through all of that. All right, I'm excited to dive next into what's up for 2023, both for me personally and for the podcast. But before we do that, I just want to share a little bit about this company I'm super, super excited about that I really hope you guys go check out, which is called Coach Pals. Hey friends, we're just taking a little break from the podcast to talk about Coach Pals. Owning a wellness business can be exhausting, mystifying, and lonely. Whether it's a challenge you've never faced, getting a fresh perspective on a topic, or finding new customers for your service or product, building a network of peers is a fantastic way to garner the advice and support you need to make good decisions and create great opportunities for yourself, your business, and your team. Coach Pals is a wellness professional network. The advanced search engine allows you not only to find, connect, and collaborate with like-minded individuals, but will match your professional identity to the needs of hundreds of users around the world who are looking for your products or services. Coach Pals profiles are exclusively designed for wellness professionals, and that's one of the things I loved most about this platform. Users will automatically be able to access all the important data to set their confidence, from your biography, skills, experience, and certifications to your website, social media, podcast, contacts in your network, testimonials, skills, endorsements, and so much more. If this sounds interesting to you, head on over to coachpals.com and get started today. You can sign up and try it out completely for free, but if you'd like, I've got a special promo code for you. It's MBOMPALS, and that'll get you 3 months free off the professional membership. Once you're on Coach Pals, make sure you go and find my profile under Amanda Kingsmith. I would love to see you there. All right, now back to the episode. Also, if you guys haven't checked out, I created a channel on Coach Pals, which is a super cool feature that they have. It's called Let's Talk Podcasting. It's an opportunity to share your podcast if you have one, an opportunity to talk about podcasts you like. I've been sharing podcast episodes, some of my favorite podcasts, all that type of stuff. So if you head on over to Coach Pals and then search the channel Let's Talk Podcasting, or go to my page, you can find it there. But I would really love if you came and joined the community. It's still super small, but growing quickly, and I'm really excited to see you over there. All right, so plans for 2023. The first thing I want to share is that we've got some exciting travels for 2023. So the baby is getting a little bit bigger and we're feeling more comfortable with her. So my husband and I have decided to do a bit more travel with her in 2023, or at least the first half of 2023, which we're super excited about. So we've been living in Querétaro in Mexico for the last year, almost year and a half, and this has been an amazing home base for us. We moved from an Airbnb that we were staying in while my end of pregnancy and through the baby's first few months of life. And we decided to make our home a little bit more permanent here by moving into a house and signing a lease, which is something we haven't done for many years. And we're excited to continue that as this being our base, but also start traveling a little bit more, which if you guys have followed along for a while, you'll know that for many, many years, I've been fully nomadic, just wherever I am is my only home. And it's been fun to kind of have this home, but also travel. So that's what we're looking forward to in this year. In early parts of the year, we're going to be heading to Panama City, Panama for a couple days, and then onwards to Medellin in Colombia, both places we've been before and we're excited to return to with baby Lou. And then in the spring, we have booked a month in Japan, which is a country we have been really, really keen to get back to since we were there back in 2017. And that was during my first kind of nomadic stint. So if you guys remember, I was doing the podcast, early days of the podcast, while I was all over Asia. And I remember doing podcast interviews at all sorts of crazy hours of the day and night. So really, really excited to get back there. We've been waiting for them to open up post-pandemic, and just really excited to be back in this super cool, unique country. And then we've got some trips in Mexico planned and some ones that we're excited to get planning. So very, very excited about that. There's lots of things that we still want to do in this country. And it's really amazing to be living in a place where, like, my bucket list literally just keeps growing. So far, we've got a beach trip planned in February for the baby and I's birthdays. So very excited about that. And we've got a couple other things on our list that we'll start planning soon. We'll be taking a trip back to Canada sometime in the summer when the weather is warm, and I'm not sure what fall of 2023 holds for us yet, but very excited to maybe explore some other new places and, inside Mexico, outside Mexico. So very excited to have some travels on the radar and on the calendar, and excited to share all of that with you guys via social media. I know some of you guys follow my travel account as well, and the travel podcast. If you don't, it's called The World Wanders. My husband and I do it together. We release bi-weekly episodes, so one episode every other week, and we'll have lots of travel content on the things we're doing, and of course lots of Instagram posts and stories and all that stuff. So if you want to follow along with that, definitely welcome over there. And then in terms of business, personal life, the decision that I have made for 2023 is that I'm not going back to work in a full-time capacity. And this is something that I think my husband and I have talked at length about, and we've kind of known for a while. Just as I've been, like I said, adding more work to my plate over the last couple of months, I just feel like I hit a max in terms of, hey, like if I'm going to keep working this much, I need some more childcare support. And we've decided that at this point, we are not wanting to put the baby in full-time childcare or have a full-time nanny or anything like that. And decided that I'm going to stick to part-time work and not really increase work for 2023. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited to continue just refining the balancing act of being basically a full-time mom while also running a part-time business and also leaning on the people on my team to support me. And since I've been doing this now for a year, it's felt so comfortable, or so much more comfortable, to just say, hey, can you support me with this? Hey, could we improve upon this, but can you take it on? And I just feel really, really grateful for the people that I do get to work with who have done such an incredible job at supporting me in my business. And a big announcement about the podcast is that we are switching the format of the podcast for 2023. So the format that you have been used to the last couple of years has been weekly podcast episodes. Every single Monday they come out, outside of we usually do a little bit of a holiday break. And that's where, we only had 49 episodes instead of 52. And for me, it's felt like a lot this year. And the reason why I'm deciding to switch the format is that when I'm doing podcast interviews, when I'm selecting guests, when I'm sitting down to have conversations, I want to feel all in on what we're talking about. And when I'm going through the motions every single week of like, hey, I need a podcast episode. Okay, what am I going to talk about? Who am I going to have on the show? Sometimes it gets a little bit like, hey, I'm on the hamster wheel, and that's never been my thing. And so for 2023, I want to be very intentional about the content that we're releasing. I want it to be super valuable to all of you listening. I want it to be conversations that I am absolutely stoked to have. It's not to say that I'm not excited about the conversations I have had this year, because I've had incredible guests on the show and so many cool conversations and learned so much, through the podcast. And I hope you guys have too. But for me, I find that sometimes if I'm tired, or maybe I don't know a guest and I haven't had time to research them, it's hard for me to be like 110% stoked and all in. And usually once I sit down with a person, I get into it, I get there. But I want to show up like that. And I know this is something I talked about with Britt Coldlow way back when. I think her episode went out at the beginning of June, and she was my first podcast interview back. And it was the moment where I was like, yes, this is a hell yes for me in my business. This is something that I'm so excited about. This is something I've missed over the last, 3 months of not recording, or 4 months not recording, whatever it was. And I was so excited to get back to it. But then it was like, hey, we need all these podcast episodes, schedule, book, record. And it just becomes a lot. And so I'm stepping back a tiny bit and going back to a format that we actually started with the podcast. So way back in 2016, when I launched this beautiful, beautiful show, it was seasonally based. And so basically I did seasons based on my time and capacity. And so something I knew was that summers are always super busy for me. I travel full time, or I did travel full time, but I would always go back to Canada in the summer. And that time is full on for me. I see all my friends, all my family. I jam pack it into a couple weeks or a couple of months. And I didn't want to have to be recording And so in the last few years, I've done that, but what I've done is backlogged episodes the way I did for maternity leave. But that puts a lot of pressure on me to do, sometimes 2-3 podcast episodes in a day. And that's a lot energetically. You guys know because you're teaching yoga classes, right? It's like the same thing. You got to find your maximum where you can show up 100% for your students. And I want to show up 100% for you guys. And if I'm recording 3 episodes in a day, I'm just not 100% by the time we hit, 1.5 episodes. My energy is waning. And so back in the day, we did season 1 and we did season 2 after a break. And then I think we started season 3 and we basically never ended it. And so I don't know what season this will be, but I think we'll just call it the spring and the fall season. So my plan as of right now is to release about 25 episodes this upcoming year. So it's going to be about half as many as we did this past year. And it'll be separated into 2 probably 10 to 12 episode seasons. I'm still ironing out all the details, but you can be guaranteed that you will be the first to know when everything is ready to go. So this will be the last episode of 2022, and there's going to be a pretty significant break. We will be back with the show likely at the end of March or the beginning of April, so sometime in the springtime. And I'll be updating everyone via the newsletter, my email newsletter, as well as social media. So if you're not a part of those, make sure you do get on that so you can be the first to know. And then, of course, if you're subscribed to the podcast, once episodes are live again, you'll start getting those, and I'll make sure to give you updates once we've got a firm launch date for the new season. And I'm really excited to hear what you guys think of this. One thing I've been thinking a lot about with this is not only my time and energy, but also yours. There are a bazillion podcasts out there, and I am, as always, so grateful that you choose to listen to this one. But I think about my own podcast consumption and how it's so hard to listen to shows every single week. I just feel like there's shows I love and I want to listen to them, but now I've got so many of them that I just don't have enough hours of podcast listening time to listen to them all, every single week. And so I'm hoping that maybe this gives you some time to catch up on some episodes from 2022 that you've been excited about, that you've had downloaded, that you just haven't had time to listen to, maybe even to go back into the archives and really get into the nitty-gritty of things you're interested in. And then, hopefully feel excited and ready to listen when we launch the new episodes in a couple of months. So yeah, we'll be offline for a little bit of time, and I'm really excited for this time and really excited to dive into planning for 2023 and all the episodes and that type of thing. So I'm really keen to hear what you guys think of this new format. So once we get going, in a couple of months, please make sure you're reaching out to me. Let me know. I always love hearing from you. If you have any thoughts, feedback, guest recommendations, all that, make sure you send me an email, info@mbmyoga.com. And I just want to reiterate how grateful I am that you're here, that you listen to the show, that you, once again, share the show, share it with other yoga teacher friends, family friends on your social media. That stuff truly makes a difference. So thank you so much for everything that you do and for being a part of this community. And I'm hoping that you'll continue to be a subscriber and a part of the community, and that you're, getting excited for what's ahead for 2023, because I know we've got some good stuff, even though we're changing things up a little bit. We're still here, still going to be making content, and still really excited for everything to come. So that's what's going on for next year. I'm excited for this change. I went back and forth about it for a long time. I sat with it in meditation and journaling sessions. I talked with other people about it and have decided that this is what we're going to try for this year. And if it doesn't work, then we can change it up. But I'm excited to give it a shot and just see how it goes. So really excited to hear from you guys and hear what you think. And I hope that you've had an amazing 2022. I hope that your year has felt full in all the good ways, and that you're reflecting on how the year went and getting excited for what's ahead to 2023. For me, this year has been full on. It's been very busy, but very amazing. One of my best years for sure, with the birth of my daughter. And I am really excited for what's to come in this next year. I'm excited to step into this next chapter and just see, what's ahead. And one practice that I'll just leave you with that I really love to do is at the end of the year, as I'm reflecting, I always like to choose a word for the year, kind of a theme for the year. And for 2022, I selected the word surrender. This was a word that was very important for me as I headed into giving birth. I knew that that was a time where I would really need to surrender more than I'd ever surrendered before. And then I would need to surrender into motherhood, to all the things that I couldn't control. And boy, oh boy, did I have to do that. And I'm still very much working with that. And I actually considered just having the same word for 2023 because I feel like as much as I surrendered in 2022, this is a practice that I need to dive even deeper into. So that word is kind of sitting with me, but a word that I'm really leaning into for 2023 is ease. I think as a manifesting generator, which is my human design, I do best when I lean into the things that I'm most excited about. But one of the things I struggle with is making big changes, a big change like changing the format of a podcast, that I've been doing a certain way for 5 years, 4 years. It's hard for me to make a big shift, yet I know my manifesting generator energy does best when I lean into things I'm most excited about. And when I thought about what I'm most excited about, it was changing stuff up. And so I'm just really craving ease. I'm here to work hard. I'm here for, the ups and the downs, but I really want day to day to feel easeful and not to feel like the tension and the pull between, hey, am I mothering right now? Hey, am I working? Which one do I want to be doing? Oh, I'm mothering. I want to be working. I'm working. I want to be mothering. And so for me, I'm leaning into that surrender, but also calling in ease for this year. So I will leave you with that. I would really encourage you to go through this own practice yourself, to reflect on the year, to look ahead to the following year, and to maybe set a word or a theme for your year. If you do that, I would love to hear what it is. So feel free to reach out to me via social media or email. I always love hearing from you guys. I am wishing you and your families, whatever that looks like, the happiest of holidays, a very happy new year, a very beautiful start to 2023. And I will be updating you soon once we've got a launch date for the new season of the show. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening, and I will see you soon. All right. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomeyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomeyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.